It's time to fill you in on the hole in the ground. Hello and welcome to Rotted Review of the Day, and today I am reviewing the 2019 movie The Hole in the Ground. This was picked up by A24 after being shown at Sundance, and having watched it now, what I found about this movie is it is really nothing that is breaking a whole lot of new ground with any kind of storyline concepts or scares. Not a lot of new territory with the characters, but it still managed to, I enjoyed it. Overall, I enjoyed it. It managed to come up with a tried and true story element that was told simply and told well. This follows the characters of Sarah and Chris O'Neill, mother and son, and we find them in the midst of a move. It looks like they're already kind of established where they are, but very, very freshly. Chris is still kind of getting used to the new school system and not having friends yet and so on, and Sarah is making cleanup modifications, new wallpaper and so forth to the house that they appear to be renting. And we kind of get a little bit of backstory as to why they have moved and what they are doing now and what kind of pieces of their life that they are trying to pick back up. And while exploring in the woods near the house, they come across a very large hole in the ground, basically a big pit, an apocalyptically big pit. And after that, there starts being a slightly weird chain of events. They run into an old woman that is eyeballing Chris very, very closely and is acting very erratically. And we come to find out that the old woman kind of went a bit bonkers back in the day. She had a son and apparently went through went through her own trials and tribulations, bursting into classrooms and screaming at her son, saying, "Well, you're not my son," so on and so forth, and until she ultimately ran him down with a car. And now she is the mumbling, kind of crazy old woman that lives on the road and is ultimately harmless, but is still just not all there. So, another weird event that starts happening is Sarah starts noticing some peculiarities in Chris's behavior, some oddities, and I'm not going to really get into a whole lot more. I don't want to really spoil the plot line. Suffice it to say, this is dealing with concepts that horror movies have dealt with time and time again. This is really, like I said, nothing terribly new, even about the scare elements of this one. But like I said, it's a tried and true story element, plot device, character device that was just simply told well. And I really, really did wind up enjoying it. It's why I'll go ahead and throw up the scores here. Each one of the individual categories is worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And it's why the plot got an 18. I really did enjoy this one, even if it wasn't doing anything terribly new. It did it well. And it still managed to eke out some characters that I rallied behind and cared about and were performed very well. The intention of this one got a little bit lower of a 15. I would still say on the higher side of average. There weren't really a whole lot of surprises, and despite what I've heard from other folks, for me, that really didn't have a whole lot of scares. It had some good creepy moments, but nothing I would consider to be really scary. It certainly didn't stick with me on that level. But I think the intention would have gotten higher if it had the opportunity to have a lot more of a massive punch to it. No pun intended. If it had explored some more of the correlation between the events of the present with the events of the past, by fleshing out the past more, it leaves the past touched upon but somewhat ambiguous and doesn't really explore it a whole lot, i.e. what drove them to be in the house, what drove them to move. It is mentioned, but it is not fully fleshed out and explored. And I really think that it really could have been to draw that kind of parallel between the past and the present, and ultimately take that concept of, abuse. It's not really, it's not a huge spoilery element. It's established fairly quickly. But abuse being such a violation of relationship construct, and the idea of taking a trusted loved one and then turning them into something monstrous. And like I said, it would be so easy to draw that kind of parallel, then that kind of corollary, and then we would wind up with an answer to the question of, with Sarah and with the old woman who were having these kind of similar, unique experiences to them, what makes Sarah better? What makes her have the ability to overcome where the old woman character did not? And I think that would answer that question. It would fully flesh out the characters more. It would draw the storyline parallel, and it would have just ultimately provided a lot more depth and a lot more punch to the story itself and the final outcome. I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity in this one, and but suffice it to say, I really did enjoy it nonetheless. I just really think that this could have got much higher if it had done that simple little storyline device. The acting, I did give a 20 out of 25. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but I'm going to do my best here. Shiana Kerslake did an amazing job as Sarah O'Neill. She played the mother character very, very, very well. The love that she had for her son Chris it shone through in her performance, and the heartbreak of seeing that love turn to fear. I was able to feel that with her. It was a performance that I could rally behind as a protagonist, and I did enjoy the performance. I thought every element of this was sold well, but I think the real standout, surprisingly, was James Quinn Markey, who played her son Chris. For a child actor, this was an exemplary performance, and all the different levels and all the different subtleties and tics that he was able to integrate into the performance to portray different layers and different levels to him as the movie progressed was superb. And I think is one of the ultimate elements that sold the movie for me. When you have a cast of pretty much just two people, everybody else was fairly ancillary. The mother and the son were what really drove this, and what really made this a tried and true story element that was told simply and told well was the fact that the characters were believable and the acting performances sold them. So that's, I think, ultimately what separates this movie from some others that may have been trying the same story elements and not really succeeding on the same level that this one did. The technical, I gave a 17 out of 25. This had a lot of really muted tones to the color palette, and I think ultimately that did work well. The makeup and the CGI and the practical effects were all very serviceable. There was one CGI effect in particular, though, that could have used a little bit more polish, and I'm not going to really I'm going to talk about it in the most general sense I can, but ultimately, when you have a benign creature that is CGI for no discernible reason and is very obviously so, then it takes away any shock value of impending terrible things that are about to happen to it. You kind of expect it when there's, like I said, no reason for it to be CGI, and clearly was. You just knew that something was going to happen, and I did, and it took away a potential jump scare, shocking moment for me. But regardless, ultimately, I did think, all told, the whole movie was done very well on a technical level. So this gives it a total of 70 out of 100 points. Nothing really groundbreaking, mind-blowing, or revolutionary, but I would still recommend it. This was a good, moody horror movie that's both accessible and enjoyable. And that's my review of 2019's The Hole in the Ground. I really thank you for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.